Hello adventurers and welcome back to the Fantasy Forge. Today we're going to discuss these 7 questions that you need to ask yourself if you want to create a great fantasy world. So let's dive in. The first question you want to ask yourself is what makes your world different? So what about this point in time specifically, this story that you are telling right now, what makes it different? And why is this the time that you are deciding to tell your story? And why is this the world that is worth knowing about and not some other place and time in your world or in your history? So identify what the unique aspects or defining characteristics are at this particular time in your story that sets your world apart from others. Are there rare resources? Was there some sort of cataclysmic event that just happened, or is there a cultural phenomenon that's happening? Consider how these unique elements impact the lives of your characters, how they drive your conflict, right? Or how it creates opportunities for compelling stories. What I mean is the discovery of a rare resource, how would that affect the world? If a government suddenly discovered a powerful magic that allowed people to cast level 10 spells, that's going to create some pretty tense conflict, especially for other world powers if they were to find out about it. So now you could have a whole political intrigue. Or what if it wasn't a government that found that and it was a single person that discovered this rare resource? How would that affect your story, and who might come after that person if word got out? The second question you want to ask yourself is, how does magic affect your world? You want to explore the role and the rules of magic in your world, but also think about its source. What are its limitations and how does it affect your society? If you take the time to consider how magic influences the power dynamics, the social structures, the daily lives of the people that live in your world, you're going to start to see opportunities for conflict and tension rising from using magical abilities. What if there's a country that didn't have access to it at all? How would they feel if they bordered a country that had such powerful abilities? The third question you want to ask yourself is, who is the world power and how do they rule? You want to identify the dominant governing body or multiple entities in your world, whether it's a kingdom, an empire, a council of factions, a raving horde, whoever it is that is ruling your world. You really want to consider the political structure that they have. What are their ideologies? How do they rule? How do other people see them? How do the people that they rule see them? By considering these things, you're going to see that when you're role-playing, even in improvisation, you're going to start to think more creatively about how people react. If you understand that the people in this town love their ruler, when you're role-playing those people, they're probably going to be more happy. They're going to be more cheerful and willing to help, versus if you were to walk into a country where everybody hates their rulers and afraid, you might have less people out on the streets. You might have people who are starting to plot a coup. You can see where the tension starts to come in and where you can find opportunities for better storytelling just by thinking about who rules and how they rule. The fourth question you want to ask yourself is, what are the biggest historical moments of the last 500 years? Realistically, anything beyond 500 years, most commoners are not going to remember much, if anything at all. We don't even remember that much about our history 500 years ago. So think about the longer history of your world for sure, because that's going to make a much better world, but also focus on the most recent history. Consider wars, revolutions, discoveries, catastrophes that had far-reaching consequences and that affect the present-day setting, but don't go too far back that you get lost in the details, because all you're going to do at that point is drive yourself crazy, and I'm telling you that as a pro tip. The fifth question you want to ask yourself is, what role does religion or belief systems play? Explore the role of religion. One of the things that is widely accepted in Dungeons & Dragons 5e and in a lot of fantasy is this belief in gods. The Lord of the Rings had the Valar. You have the old gods and the new gods in Game of Thrones. And in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it says that one of the things that is accepted in the lore of Dungeons & Dragons is that gods exist and their power comes from their believers. That's just something that's accepted in Dungeons & Dragons. So explore how this role of religion and belief systems is going to shape the cultures in your world, how it's going to shape the moral fabric of your world. People might be less willing to commit crime if they are aware that there are these omnipresent beings watching them at all times. Consider how your pantheon, your specific pantheon of gods, and their rituals and the influence that they have and their faith and their individual characters and their societal norms, all of that, how that creates conflict between different religious groups. How would people who follow this god feel about the ones who follow this god who thinks the opposite? By exploring that a little bit, you can really start to see how you're going to create a much more believable world. Or if gods don't exist in your world at all, why? And how would the lack of gods, and everybody knows there is no gods, how would that affect your world? So make sure to consider the role of religion, even if there isn't any. The sixth question you want to ask yourself is, how do different societies interact and trade? Think about our own world. Think about how our cultures, especially in the ancient world, interacted with each other. Think about the Carthaginians and their war elephants. And when somebody saw an elephant for the first time on a battlefield, how terrifying that must have been. Consider how the interactions and relationships between all of your different societies and civilizations in your world, and I'm talking about whether they are allied or neutral, or if they are in conflict and open war right now. Consider how those trade routes, how those diplomatic relations, those cultural exchanges, the impact of people falling in love with each other across those borders and dispersing the different cultural beliefs. How all of these things are going to impact things like the economy, politics, and, like I said, cultural diffusion. Consider all of that, because even if you're in open war, you're going to have people from one side spilling over to the other, and it can honestly create some of the most interesting stories, some of the most interesting conflict. Think about a setting or a story where two soldiers get caught on a battlefield and they both get swept off a cliff and are lost to the wilderness in a forest that nobody ever goes into. And now these two people from different factions who were at war with each other have to rely on each other to help each other survive, because if they don't work together, they are most certainly dead. And think about the tension and the story that can be told just through those two characters. And that's just one impact of that sort of interaction. So think about how societies interact and trade, because it is one of the best and juiciest ways to get some good stories. And the final question you want to ask yourself is, what secrets or lost knowledge lurk in your world? Now that you've thought about the history, how do people uncover hidden mysteries? How are ancient artifacts or forgotten knowledge that exists in your world, how are they found? What would happen if they were found? You can think about so many different quests and discoveries and challenges and characters that can be created simply by adding the little slight chance that somebody may encounter some secret or some lost knowledge. This adds such a huge level of depth to your world, but more than that, it adds intrigue. And intrigue is what makes players come back to your table over and over again, because they want to know more. So think about the secrets, think about the lost knowledge, think about how that was spread out in your world and why it's there, and how you can present that to your players. I hope this video helped you start to ask yourself some of those questions. Maybe you already have. Maybe you've asked yourself some different questions. And if there are other questions that you think I missed, leave them down in the comments below. I would love to know what you do to make your world that much better. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. Forge on, adventurers, and we'll see you in the next video.